being an actor, whenever I got a role, I really enjoyed doing it. But I found just it to be the most sort of passive and powerless role in the industry. So you do all this training, you get out there, and then you're waiting for someone to give you a job.
What would be your dream role?
What would be my dream role? Oh, director.
The one who sits in the dark chair.
Yeah, I don't want to be in front of the camera anymore. I want to be behind it.
How long have you been on your break for now?
Oh, yeah. I properly quit at the beginning of this year.
Oh, okay.
My partner's always like, don't tell people you've quit. Just don't tell them you've retired. You're just on a break. And I'm just like, I don't know if I'll ever go back. So, I don't know.
So you've been 8 months sober.
Yeah.
Okay.
But even before that, I think, like, my agent was great. I used to say no to a lot of things. They were like, are you available for this? And I was like, no. But they were, really flexible with me. It never turned into like a viable full-time career. Like alongside that, for me, I was always teaching screen acting and filmmaking, and now I teach full-time at the film school, AFTRS, the Australian Film, Television and Radio School. I was, I think, 35 and I'd never had a full-time job. So that was my first full-time job. And it was like, it's great. Like I always thought, no, I'm a freelancer. I'm making films. I'm acting. I'm doing all this other stuff. But then when I got the job, I was just like, this is awesome. Like,
Let me just sit here for a little bit.
Yeah, it's so nice to have like a focus and a place to go every day. Like I think for me personally, I need the structure and the discipline is really good for me. Like I always thought I needed the freedom to create and do my own thing. But then I don't know if I ever had the discipline to kind of see it through. Like I'm almost doing more now that I have a full-time job, like I am managing to sort of show up and create my own work and do lots of other stuff because I'm busier in a way, which is like almost counterintuitive.
If you want something done, get a busy person to
yes,
do it.
And my dad has said that his whole life.
Right.
He's always like, if you want something done, ask the busiest person.
And now he's like, I told you so.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't seem very impressed.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, they're always right. Parents are always right, aren't they?
So they're based in Perth right now, your
Yeah.
dad and your mom.
Yeah.
And is it just you in the family or any
No,
other
I've got an
siblings?
older sister. She's 6 years older than me. I'm married with 2 kids, who 13 and 11.
Right.
Yeah, they're great. So like I love going back and visiting them and hanging out with them.
Did she pursue the corporate life or is she also...
Yeah, like she's quite the opposite to me. I think we've always been referenced even in our childhoods as like chalk and cheese. She has, works in corporate and has stayed in Perth, and whereas I've gone and done all kinds of other things and didn't have a full-time job until I was 35.
How do you feel the industry's evolved over the years since you first started?
It has changed quite a bit, like quite significantly. We still have a long way to go, but it has changed. Like I remember graduating from drama school in 2005, and in 2006 I read Lee Lewis's platform paper on colourblind casting. I can't remember the exact name of it. And it was such a blinkers off moment for me. I'd never really thought about it when I was at drama school and didn't realise how the situation in the industry was affecting like my self-esteem and my view of myself and my goals. Like that it was so kind of systemic in the way that I saw myself. Like I never expected to like get main stage theatre work. I never expected to kind of to crack it. I hoped it, but I sort of deep down had this feeling like it was never going to actually happen. Maybe that's part of the reason why like I never made it or anything, because like actors have to be really resilient and really believe in themselves. So who knows about that? But I read Lee Lewis's platform paper. At the beginning of a particular chapter, it described like a 30-year-old Asian female, and it was just like a hypothetical, and it was just like, picture this. What if this 30-year-old, and at that time I was, I think, 24 or 25, and it doesn't get work, all through their 20s. And then suddenly when they're 30 years old, they get a job and they're rusty and they're not very good, And I read it and I was like, oh my God, this is me. This is like going to be my life. And I was just like, oh my God. Like it was just this, because it was so close to home, really cut deep. And I was just so like shocked and fearful, and the blinkers came off and I was like, oh my God, like this whole industry is like built in a way, you know, where I the only Asian I've seen on television is Lee Lin Chin, you know, like at that point in time. So I was like, and it just made me sort of go, oh, is that the way? And then very quickly after that, I decided I've got to go back to filmmaking, because my degree before acting at NIDA was in media studies, and it was mainly like film and television stuff. So I had a camera and I was just like, I need to make my own stuff. And I started making short films and stuff at that point in time. So yeah, since then, I think, you know, falling into the advocacy role, doing work at MEAA, the Media Entertainment and Arts Alliance, and was co-founder and co-chair with Bali Patta, and plenty of others co-founded same time as us, the Equity Diversity Committee. I remember when we started, it felt like no one was talking about it. I remember sitting in a meeting at the National Performers Committee, and they were the ones who sort of went, we need to do something because we're not very diverse. So kudos to them for sort of championing, finding people to found this organisation. And just crying and just being like, and everyone cries at these meetings because they're a bunch of actors. We're always crying. And just being like, you know, looking at Bali and being like, I can't speak. And I was like, you talk. And he was like, I don't know what you want to say. And I was just really overwhelmed that it was happening in a kind of institutional way, you know, with the union, the Actors Union, that was an organisation that has been around for so long, and that we were talking about it and people were listening to us. We were like, you know, maybe things can change. It was obviously in the zeitgeist. Obviously, a lot of people were working on it, not just us. We created some kind of structural changes in MEAA, I guess, in terms of embedding that committee. It's grown over the time now. There's sort of like great First Nations representation. There's a disability subcommittee. There's non-binary performers, LGBTQIA group that is also forming a subcommittee. And so the conversation is really spread. And then add to that, there's, you know, so many things happen in the industry. Like now we have the SDIN, which is the Screen Diversion and Inclusion Network, which has the heads of, you know, free-to-air television, Foxtel, like all the big kind of companies meeting each other and going, how can we increase diversity, and doing their best, you know, to kind of unpack potentially their unconscious bias and go, what's actually happening and what can we do? That's a hard journey for them to go through. Yeah, there's so many different campaigns now. There's hashtag just not that many, which is like, you know, photos of where we hear in the industry, oh, there's just not that many Asians. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, we'll get in a photo together, you know, and they started in Melbourne, and I think they're just coming up to Sydney now to do stuff. So there's just so many different angles that people have taken to increase diversity. That was just in Australia. Overseas, you know, in the UK and the US, huge groundswell movement to have films like Black Panther and Crazy Rich Asians, and now The Farewell, you know, has really made a difference in Australia, I think, as well. If you look at that, it has drastically changed. I guess where I think we're at the moment is that there is a bit of people thinking, I think maybe like, oh, this is just a trend, or this is like now diversity's cool right now, or like people are getting the opportunity simply because there's a big push for diversity. It's like feminism, it's equality. It's not saying women are going to take over everything and we're going to subjugate men now. Like, we're fighting for equality. Diversity has become inclusion and is now becoming belonging, evolving the way we talk about it as well, and our attitude towards it. Yeah, so it's changed a lot. Just started a PhD in the development of intersectional characters. So intersectionality, a lot of people don't know what it is. I came across it when Patricia Arquette won, was it an Emmy or an Oscar? I don't even remember. She won a big award, and it's terrible, I don't remember. And she got up and she was just like, I'm up here calling for wage equality for women in the industry. And there was like this gif of like Meryl Streep and J-Lo going, yes, yes, you know. And then she then went backstage and was interviewed afterwards, and she said something along the lines of, it's now time for people of colour and like and queer people to like fight for women. I heard it and I was like, oh, I don't really know what that means. It's an odd thing to say, but I didn't really understand why. And then I went on Twitter and all these people were going, how dare she say this? Like, doesn't she know what intersectionality is? And then I thought to myself, I don't know what intersectionality is. I'm meant to be like in the diversity space. I don't know what that means. I quickly Googled it. An identity has more than one axis. So not only are we women and we might experience sexism, but we are also Asian. So we might experience racism. The discrimination or the systemic kind of attitude towards us can't carry on both of those at the same time. So we might be experiencing something because we're Asian women, but not because of just sexism or not because of just racism, for example. So it came from Black feminism and looking at the legal system founded by Kimberly Crenshaw, like way back in like 1989. So they've been talking about it for a long time. And then since then, it's really developed into sort of a lens of looking at things and looking at other identities beyond Black women to sort of go, how does intersectionality play in different situations? I'm now looking at the development of intersectional characters to kind of go, well, in the screen industry, it seems like frequently we deal with characters in a way where it's just one axis. So it's just like, oh, there's your Asian character, or there's your disabled character, or there's your gay character. But when do we get the kind of queer, Indigenous, disabled character, you know, and would that character ever meet or be in a scene with an older Asian woman, you know, like, and I think we're missing out on a lot of stories because I think that's really interesting. We kind of need a more nuanced way of looking at diversity in the industry. And so at the moment, my head is a jumble of, because it's early days of researching intersectionality and the screen studies and how that can potentially be applied to the screen industry, and developing a methodology that I can hopefully gift to the industry in a way.
What's your research so far telling you that's maybe a bit surprising to you?
It's not fully formed yet because it's really early days, but there's 3 types of intersectionality, which is structural, political, and representational. And in terms of representational, it's very much like what we see in the media. And so it's not necessarily surprising. It's sort of reaffirming the importance of screen and screen stories, and how screen stories are probably one of the most accessible things for everyone, and is now all over. Like, we watch video every day, you know, it's all over social media, like even advertisements on the streets move now, you know, that's all video, and how much that affects culture and and wider society, how we play a huge part in being culture shapers, because that's what people are ingesting.
So as a culture shaper, what kind of stories do you feel are not being told?
There's so many potential stories. I mean, it's infinite what kinds of stories can be told. I can't necessarily answer that because I'm constantly surprised at, you know, what my students produce and what I see entering the zeitgeist. I think for me, it's just sort of like allowing the freedom for us to drop stereotypes. In the past, a lot of the work we've seen has been either historical, so like looking at a historical lens of what's happened, or if it's modern day, it's a real stereotype of who we are as people from diverse backgrounds. More and more we're seeing, and I'm excited about, contemporary stories that defy the stereotypes. But then you see and you kind of go, oh, I get that. Like, it's totally realistic. It's totally believable. We don't kind of just go, oh, that would never happen. But it's not the stereotype. And I think the more we have of those, the wider the breadth of those characters and stories are told, the more people are going to be able to like be less surprised when they meet me, for example, you know, like, because people meet, oh, you're a gay Asian woman with an Australian accent. Like, wow, what? Like, you know, like I've had that throughout my life. And it's just kind of like, I exist, and lots of other really unique combinations and diverse combinations. I'm not even that unique, probably. Like, there's probably lots of me, like, you know, out there. It's not such a surprise. And I think that way, you know, thinking kind of in a utopian way creates a society which is much more interested, not just tolerant, but accepting, and just more collaboration can happen, and it's just a nicer place to live, I think. Any great artist that you've seen has done crap work in the past. Like, I personally am a bit chicken and not that confrontational. If you stuff this up, there's never going to be another Asian play for about 10 years, right? You know, because there was at that time there was nothing.